One of the most important things that determines your health, happiness, and success is your habits. Having negative habits versus having positive ones can end you up in completely different places in the long run. So how do you actually create good habits that stick? Well, check out this proven method from the head psychologist of Stanford's behavior design lab. What is up, you amazing human? My name is Ben Hart. In today's video, we're going to be talking about habit change and how to make good habits that actually stick in your life. If you dig this video, want to see more like in the future, hit the subscribe button below. And there's people in the world you think might benefit from learning how to create good habits in their life. Hit the like button, leave a comment, it'll help them find this video. All right, so we're talking about habits today, and habits are such a key component to having a happy, successful, healthy life. You know, there are so many ways that we are unconsciously having behaviors, doing things throughout our day that are either positive for us or negative for us. You know, habit change and learning this skill can be so key to creating happiness in your, in your body, with your health, in your financial life, in your love and relationships, and, just success overall. And so what we wanted to do is figure out the ways and discover the ways that we can really create good habits for ourselves that actually stick. Because, habits are the idea that we don't have to think about it. We're unconsciously firing these behaviors. Our brain has wired up these really clear pathways, and we're just going on autopilot. And that can go, as I said, to the positive or the negative. So many of us, as we're thinking about creating habits, what we often do is, especially like New Year's resolutions, is create this big new thing we want to do. I want to write a novel. I want to lose 15 pounds. I want to, start a business. And we take on these really big things. And it can be so easy to go for it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and then come February, dropped it. Like, it's no longer something you can do. We weren't able to create a habit after actually going toward that thing. And the thinking there and the research shows that it's because we're often taking on things that are way too big for us to create a habit around. What we actually need to do is break it down into much simpler steps to create habits that are tiny. So the method I'm going to share with you today comes from Fogg. He wrote the best-selling book, Tiny Habits. And he is the founder of Stanford's behavior design lab, where they study behavior change, willpower, motivation, and just really understanding how do we create habits, how do we make choices, and how do they create methods that could really, really work for people. And what BJ discovered is this method that he now shares called tiny habits. And so the idea with any habit that you have is that there is a cue that happens. Like, let's say I walk into the kitchen and I smell fresh baked cookies. The cue sets off my habit, which is wanting to mow down on a hell of a lot of sugar. I do my habit, I eat all those cookies, and then there's some reward from that, which for me is whatever, all the amazing things that go off in my brain from the sugar. And then obviously there's ramifications from that, and there's a crash from sugar, and my body doesn't feel good, and all these things. But the actual habit loop of mowing down on cookies has a cue, the actual habit, and then the reward from that habit, which is why I do it. So we see that happening all the time throughout our life. Something cues a habit, we then do our habit, and then we get the reward from that habit that we were wanting. And so the idea in tiny habits is to begin to become conscious of that cycle and begin to create cycles that we really want using tiny habits. So what do I mean by that? So what you would do is you would find a cue for yourself. BJ in this method calls it an anchor. So it's an anchor for this new habit that you're creating. So one example in the book that he gives that I've actually used for myself is the example of an anchor being whenever I brush my teeth. Okay, so that's something I do all the time, and I don't have to think about it. It's already a habit for me, and so it's something that I can now connect a habit to. I can make that a cue for a new habit in my life. So the cue, the anchor, is whenever I brush my teeth, and then the new habit, the new tiny habit that I'm going to create is I will floss one tooth. And so why tiny? Why one tooth? Why floss one tooth? Why not I will floss my whole mouth? The idea with tiny habits is, like I said, we sometimes set big goals for ourselves. Write a novel, lose 15 pounds, and it's too hard to do. Even with something as simple as I will brush all my teeth, there's a barrier of like, that takes some time. There's a number of steps I need to go through to do that. And for so many of us, it can be hard to actually say, oh, I'm going to do that whole new habit right now. And so what BJ has shown and what the Behavior Design Lab has shown, the research shows that if we set a very, very small habit that we want to do, a very, very small action that, takes less than 30 seconds, is really simple, is very easy, it becomes much easier to do. And then anything we do beyond that tiny habit is extra credit. So in this example, my tiny habit would be I'd floss one tooth. And then obviously, like at that point, I've already got the floss in my hand. I've already done it once. I might as well just keep going. And like it's all, the momentum is there for me to floss my whole mouth. But I don't have to do that. Like the actual habit I'm trying to instill is just getting my floss out and flossing one tooth. And then everything else is extra credit, as I said. And what they found in the research is that in instilling the habit of that first step, it's kind of like the on-ramp into this new habit, it becomes so much easier to do the rest, and the full thing becomes a habit over time. So again, to create these tiny habits, what you want to do is, break it down to what is one very simple thing I can do that's like, can do in less than 30 seconds, really easy, and won't be a pain. And then it doesn't have to be the full habit you're trying to instill. Let that be extra credit. So what you do is you choose a cue, you choose an anchor, you then attach the tiny habit to it. Whenever I brush my teeth, I will floss one tooth. And then when you're finished with that, this idea of like cue, habit, reward, you want to give yourself a really powerful emotional reward. Like, yes, there is a reward of I flossed my tooth or my teeth if I went for extra credit, but that's not enough of a reward to actually make it ingrained. Like the cookies give me a huge reward. Flossing my teeth doesn't give me the same visceral reward. And so with every tiny habit, what you want to do is celebrate right after, create positive emotion. The idea is that with positive emotion, our neurons fire differently, and this tiny habit begins to actually ingrain itself. We feel like, oh, that felt good. I'm glad I did that. I want to do that again. Not just from the intrinsic reward that, may come later from actually doing that habit, but because we celebrated in that moment. So, like pump your fist after you do it, or like raise your hands in the air, like sing a little song, or maybe like, pound and explode, whatever. Like that one I like. That one, like you can see the positive emotion that goes off for me in that because it's just so silly. And that really helps to ingrain a habit. That really makes it feel like, okay, there's a reward there. Like I have a moment of like lightheartedness. I have a moment of playfulness. So find the celebration and make sure you celebrate. Positive emotion rewires ourselves. We so often think that behavior change happens from, self critique and like self-judgment and being hard on ourselves. But negative emotion doesn't actually create habits in the same way they found in the research as positive emotions. Positive emotions really create that reward where we want to do it more. So celebrate yourself whenever you're creating a new habit. So we've got anchor. After I brush my teeth, I will tiny habit. I will floss one tooth. And then after that, celebration. Boom. All right, so that's very simple 3 steps. So what you can do as you think about creating new habits for yourself is you can either choose anchors that you already have, look at things that in your life that you already do all the time and attach a tiny habit to it, or you can think of habits that you'd like to create for yourself and then figure out where in your life is an anchor already that you can attach it to. So an example for me, and actually as I say that, what's really important when you're thinking about the anchor and the tiny habit coming together, putting those together, is you want them to be related in a powerful way. You want them to be thematically related or locationally related. Like, brushing my teeth as the anchor and flossing as the tiny habit work really well because I'm doing them in the exact same spot. I'm standing there at the bathroom sink. They don't always need to be in the exact same location. Like another example is I wanted to start leaving my phone in my office before I went to bed. And so I already had an anchor, I already had a habit of going around and checking all the doors in the house to make sure they were locked before I went to bed. And so I just created the tiny habit of, after I did that, I would go and put my phone in my office. And so those aren't, happening in the same location, but it takes me 5 seconds to go put my phone in my office. But thematically, they're the same in that, it's what I do kind of wrapping up my day before I go to bed. So So there are different ways that you can create those tiny habit anchor links around theme or location, but just make sure that there's not like, things that you're doing with something in the kitchen and then something you're going to go do outside, because that can be very hard to create the connection in a really solid way if they're, far flung from each other. All right, so the final thing I just want to hammer home around this is, habit change is a skill to learn. We so often think of habits like we try to take them on and then we don't do them and we feel bad about ourselves, and really look at it as a muscle you're building. Your ability to create habits is a skill you can learn, and it is something that you get better with over time. So practice, creating a tiny habit. Practice choosing an anchor, choosing that tiny habit, and then celebrating and doing it day after day after day. And, it's really something that as you get better at creating that one, you'll be better at creating the next one, and the next one, the next one. And over time, you can create a life where so much of the positive goodness that you want for yourself is happening on autopilot, because you started small, you built this skill of habit change, and then you're able to create all of these neural pathways, all of these unconscious habits that are just taking you exactly where you want to go. Last thing I'll say is that when you form that tiny habit, it can be really powerful to mentally rehearse it before you do it. So, maybe back in the day when it was like something I didn't want to do all the time with flossing, I would actually, before I even became nighttime and I was going to go floss, I would just sit there. It's like, okay, this is going to be my new tiny habit. And then just see myself brushing my teeth and then taking out the floss and flossing one tooth and then celebrating. Brushing my teeth, taking out the floss, flossing one tooth, and celebrating. And just mentally rehearse that a number of times in your head, because the research shows that when you mentally rehearse something, you are firing those, pathways already. Your body and your mind feel like it's already happening, and it creates and it ingrains it more deeply. Just like the research shows that if I practice piano scales in my head a number of times and then I sit down and do them, my body will be able to do it better. My brain will already have wired up how to do that, and it creates the ability to ingrain that habit even more deeply. So especially when you're starting and you first choose it, I really recommend mentally rehearsing it a number of times so you kind of create that momentum in your being and your mind, such that it's so much easier to do it even when you first try to create that tiny habit. First step up and actually do it. All right, my friends, so habit change is an amazing skill to learn, really important. I highly recommend checking out this book. There's so much more in it that is really powerful. I'll link it down below so you can check it out. And I wish you well in your positive habit creation. Again, my name is Ben Hart. If you like this video, want to see more like it in the future, hit the subscribe button. If there's anybody out there you want to support in creating good habits for themselves, hit the like button, leave a comment to help them find this video. All right, until next time, I'm Ben Hart. Much love.